Welcome to Gaming by SHK. You are in building a gaming PC or building a personal computer course. I am Sharath Kumar with you. If you want to build a customized PC, there are a few key questions that you need to ask before you buy anything, because there is an old saying when it comes to working with wood: measure twice and cut once. Make sure you double check before you cut anything. And in this case, make sure that you ask yourself these questions before you buy anything. Question number 1 is, what am I going to be doing on this computer? Most of the time. Now some people are going to say, I want a high-performance gaming computer even though I'm only going to use it 1 or 2 hours each week, maybe even less than that. And that's your call to make. But this is a really good question to ask, to kind of get down to brass tacks with yourself about what you are going to be doing on the computer. But before that, please subscribe this YouTube channel. Press bell button and enable all alerts. Please share this video and channel with all your friends and family members. Most of the time, if you are going to be doing a lot of web surfing and email things like that, you probably don't want a lot of loud fan noise. You probably don't want a lot of heat being generated when your components are basically idling. So that's a really good question to start with. What am I going to be doing on the computer? Most of the time. Now the second question that you'll want to ask is, how much am I willing to spend? What is your budget? Go ahead and set your budget, because that's very important. Okay. What you have this spin is going to impact the decisions that you make as far as every component goes with your brand new custom PC. And finally, third, and I think really perhaps most importantly, is what kind of computer do you really want? Now we have been very practical and pragmatic with questions 1 and 2. What am I going to be doing on the computer most of the time, and how much money do I have to spend? But this third question is also very important. What kind of computer do you really want? It's okay if you want a computer that you can brag your friends about, and even if you are just going to play video games on it a few hours each month. If you want an elite level system, that's perfectly okay. You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be willing to pay for that kind of performance. Okay. So make sure you get absolutely what you want within the constraints of your budget and understanding what you are going to be doing with the computer. Most of the time, each person's requirements for a gaming PC can be very different, and it can be a good idea to take out a bit of time just to jot down on a piece of paper what your major requirements are. This way you stand a very good chance of figuring out your priorities and working out where you are prepared to compromise when it comes down to cost. That's of course unless you are lucky enough to have won the lottery. About half a dozen requirements will be enough just to go on with. So just so you know what requirements are, or to give you a flavor of what requirements are, I thought I'd share some of the requirements I came up with for my build. Bear in mind there is no particular order here. It's really just a brain dump of some of the things I would actually want or I'd like to have. The first thing I thought of was, I really want to be able to play the latest games of my PC. And I want a decent refresh rate on the monitor. Now my monitor at the moment is limited to 60 frames per second because it's a 60 Hz monitor and that's running at 1080p. If you are not sure what frames per second means, don't worry, I will go into that and a bit more detail later on in the course. But for now is enough to say that I just want better play the latest games at 60 frames per second minimum. I also want to future-proof my games PC so I can move across to 4K gaming later on as I upgrade my monitor, so I can take advantage of that new technology. Now because my friends are going to be seeing my computer, I want it to look very good. I don't want it to look bland. The days of the old beige computer box of truly gone. So I want to put a bit of effort into kind of blinging it up and making it look good. I want some sort of wow factor. Now another thing, another buzzword out there in the gaming world is overclocking. Now don't worry about what overclocking is at the moment. I will be looking at that in more detail later on in the course. But it's something I want to keep in the back of my mind. I want the ability to overclock my CPU or my video card GPU if I need to or if I want to. So I want a motherboard that supports that. And again, don't worry about these terms. I will be looking at those in a lot more detail later on. Now, of course, unless you have won the lottery, budget plays an important factor. And it also plays an important factor for me as well. So, I want a decent gaming computer and I want to be able to future-proofing it, and do that I'm going to need to spend around $2,000 to $2,500. Rupees 148, 660 to Rupees 185, 825. That's roughly about Rupees 148, 660 to Rupees 185, 825 at time of recording. Now my new machine isn't going to be just dedicated to gaming. I'm also a IT professional and I need it for my work. So it needs to be powerful enough to cope with some of the IT projects I work on. Those are just some of my requirements. They are just a random sort of brain dump onto a piece of paper. It's nothing particularly special, but now I want to take a bit of time to go through them and to put them into some sort of order of priority. Okay, I'm going to start looking at the architecture for our new PC build. But before I do that, what do I actually mean by the term architecture? It's just a fancy word to describe what components we need to end up with a machine we really want and we will be happy with. It's really that simple. We already have a pretty good idea as to what it is we want our new gaming computer to be able to do. We already discussed about our requirements and put them in some sort of priority. Well, now we know what that is. We need to find the components that will help us meet those requirements. And that's basically what the architecture is all about. Okay. So we have some idea as to what it is we want from our new machine. We know that most these things are important enough that we need to make some sort of effort to meet them. Otherwise, we stand a good chance of being disappointed with the end result. And that's not to mention our wallets being considerably lighter from the process. In this course, I will be taking some time to look at the components needed to meet our demands. I will also be looking at the fact that we don't always need to buy the most expensive component to get a great gaming experience. Again, budget plays a big role here, and sticking to it is important. It's all too easy to get carried away with all the marketing hype and be drawn onto a financial runaway train. This process will help keep it real when you are working out which components you need to buy. Okay, so let's take a deep look at what I mean when I say architecture. Well, like I mentioned before, it's just the fancy way of saying what components we need to build our computer. Specifically, we are going to build a gaming computer. So my emphasis will be on specific components for that. After all, it's a course on building a gaming PC and not a supercomputer. I mentioned this because the requirement number 2, being able to play the latest piece of games at 60 frames per second. This requirement plays a big role in our architecture for us to get that sort of performance for a high-end computer game. We require a pretty powerful video card, otherwise known as a graphics card, whereas a computer such as a web server will not need such a powerful graphics card because it doesn't have any graphics to display. We will probably even just get away with using the display that comes straight off the motherboard. So, let's list the components of the architecture for our games machine in order of importance. Number 1, as I have just mentioned, is the video card, also known as the graphics card, GPU. Number 2 is the CPU, which stands for Central Processing Unit. Then we have the motherboard, and then we also need some memory and a storage device to keep our games on them. And all important power supplies were given a power to all these components, and we need a decent sized case, one that's hopefully portable enough. Now, if you are not familiar with these components, don't worry, because I'm going to be spending quite a lot of time going through each of these and the various options later on in the course, but I just want to mention them because of requirement number 3, which is that we need some sort of future proofing, or to build some future proofing into our build. As time goes by, games become more demanding on a hardware in a couple of years. We may be facing one or two options. We either upgrade our build, or at worst case we have to create a whole new build from scratch. That sounds pretty excessive. So, let's factor in the cheapest option, which allows us some sort of upgrade path. Now, the best way to do that is through the video card, but to do that we also need to consider not only a video card but also the motherboard and the power supply and even their case. And if we don't do that at this point, we will be limiting our options later on. And as I said, I will be looking at this also in more detail in coming tutorials. But before that, please subscribe this YouTube channel. Press bell button and enable all alerts. Please share this video and channel with all your friends and family members. Bye from Sharath.